The president says the alt-left bears some responsibility for the violence in Charlottesville.
Human-caused fires continue to stress firefighting resources.
And crews have a long road ahead to clean up a coal train derailment near Knoxon.
Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on KPAX, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, I'm Jill Valley.
And I'm Dennis Bray.
Montana's Department of Higher Education says the University of Montana is following policy after about 40 lecturers were told their contracts may not be renewed in 2018.
MTN's Eric Clements spoke with the Deputy Commissioner of Higher Education about why those positions may not be retained and joins us live in the studio with more. Eric?
Dennis McRae says these potential staffing cuts are part of ongoing efforts at UM to align faculty expenses with revenue. McRae says guidelines require any cuts based on enrollment made to faculty must begin with non-tenure track employees, and that as adjuncts, none of the roughly 40 lecturers were eligible for tenure. That's something those employees were already aware of. The Deputy Commissioner explains these jobs rely on per semester contracts, and UM is required to provide at least one semester's notice before removing those positions. But nothing is set in stone. McRae says if the need for some of these positions exists after reprioritization takes place, new contracts could be offered this spring.
Depending on the program, depending on the department, if the university after the fall semester finds itself in a situation of wanting to extend an offer to a lecturer for spring semester, we believe the university will have that option.
Now, McRae says this all comes down to enrollment numbers and all available revenue, and that renewals of contracts do not reflect on the lecturers. Dennis?
Topping national news tonight, President Trump is coming under fire from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle for his latest remarks on the events in Charlottesville, Virginia.
During a surprise news conference today, the president placed blame on both sides involved in the chaos. Brooke Silva Braga has the latest from outside Trump Tower in New York.
Yes, I think there's blame on both sides.
A combative President Trump returned to his original assessment of the race-fueled clashes in Charlottesville, Virginia Tuesday, saying the blame should be shared.
You had a group on one side that was bad, and you had a group on the other side that was also very violent. And nobody wants to say that, but I'll say it right now.
The statement won praise from former KKK leader David Duke, but lawmakers, even Republicans, expressed outrage. Senator Marco Rubio tweeted, "You can't allow white supremacists to share only part of blame." Senator John McCain wrote, "There's no moral equivalency between racists and Americans standing up to defy hate and bigotry. The President of the United States should say so."
Racism, bigotry, anti-Semitism of any form is unacceptable.
The president was also asked if Chief Strategist Steve Bannon, who's been linked to the alt-right, will remain in his administration. The president declined to say if Bannon would keep his job, but did defend his character.
We'll see what happens with Mr. Bannon, but he's a good person, and I think the press treats him, frankly, very unfairly.
Trump also questioned if tearing down Confederate statues would lead to calls to remove monuments to slave-owning founding fathers.
I wonder, is it George Washington next week, and is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You know, you really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
Several executives have recently resigned in protest from the president's manufacturing council. Mr. Trump said they can easily be replaced. Brooke Silva Braga for CBS News, New York.
The president did denounce the man who was accused of driving the car into those protesters, calling him a murderer. Turning now to weather, a quiet and cooler note to start the work week, but the smoke is back. Here's Aaron Yost with more on what we can expect over the next few days. Aaron.
We're going to continue to see those temperatures inching up day by day, along with an increase in overall fire activity. So the smoke and the haze likely going to settle into our valleys sooner rather than later once again. Hopefully you enjoyed what we did see out there today. It was a pretty decent day in the grand scheme of things. Here's downtown Hamilton, our First Security Bank ICANN. We do have another air quality alert that's been issued. This is for Missoula County, specifically the Seeley Lake area, due to poor air quality that is starting to redevelop in that area. We've got a pretty warm and pretty dry extended forecast. Those details are on the way.
In other news tonight, Montana Rail Link says it could take several weeks before a coal train derailment northwest of Knoxon is completely cleaned up.
About 30 cars derailed Sunday night, spilling an unknown amount of coal along the banks and into the Clark Fork River along Highway 200. An MRL spokesperson says the rail company is working with state and federal agencies to ensure the cleanup is successful. They say very little coal spilled into the Clark Fork, but still do not know exactly how much that is. MRL says it's cooperating with the Federal Railroad Railroad Administration to investigate the derailment, but no word yet on what caused it. Stage 2 fire restrictions went into effect in late July, but the Missoula County Fire Protection Association reports they're still finding campfires and charcoal fires burning in the woods.
MTN's Don Fisher spoke with officials about what this means as western Montana continues with extreme fire danger.
Interagency wildland fire officials with the Missoula County Fire Protection Association are reminding folks that western Montana's Stage 2 fire restrictions remain necessary. Even though many communities received wetting rains on Sunday associated with the passage of a cold front, the amount and duration of the rain was not enough to significantly alter conditions on the ground. Chris Johnson with the Protection Agency says fire prevention is more important now than ever as fire danger remains extreme.
People don't have to look far out of their houses to see multiple columns going off. So any human-caused fire is going to cause another group of responders to put themselves into harm's way every single day. So one less fire, one less spark is one less time that responders have to roll to a scene and put themselves at risk.
Johnson says since Stage 2 restrictions were implemented on July 27th, nearly 30 campfires or charcoal fires have been discovered in areas where restrictions are in effect. Violations were discovered during nighttime and early morning patrols of area campgrounds and popular recreation sites. Johnson says firefighters in the area want to extend thanks to those who have paid attention to the restrictions and ask them to keep doing so as we close out the summer.
We're getting into a time right now with historically low dead fuel moistures. Things are snapping and cracking in the woods. Any fire right now that starts is going to be very difficult to contain. So it's up to all of us in western Montana to make sure that we're careful with any activity that we do that could create a spark.
In Missoula, Don Fisher, MTN News.
Johnson says gas stoves or other types of stoves that can be turned on and off are allowed while the restrictions are in place, but make sure they're only used in areas cleared of flammable material with a minimum of 3 feet distance from the stove. Some residents living near the Lolo Peak fire are back home tonight, but fire managers are warning everyone to remain alert as they brace for more dry weather and the potential for extreme fire behavior the second half of the week. Today, the Missoula County Sheriff's Office lifted the evacuation order for the lower section of Highway 12 along Lolo Creek from milepost 21 to milepost 20 in the west. Those were among the people told to leave when the fire was very active over the weekend. The mandatory evacuation order remains in place near Fort Fizzle and west of Mill Creek Road and Elk Meadows Road on both sides of the highway. Portions of Mormon Creek Road above and including Van Drive remain under evacuation warnings. Crews are concentrating on attacking the most active side of the fire on the South Fork of Lolo Creek using burnout operations and control lines to keep it from burning down into lower elevations. They hope to get that accomplished before hotter temperatures, lower humidities, and strong winds make a return later this week. The Lolo Peak fire has now burned more than 10,000 acres.
The Rice Ridge fire near Sealy has now burned 11,700 acres. It's 10% contained. The pre-evacuation notice for residents along Highway 83 in the Sealy Lake area remain in effect. There's a public meeting to talk about the fire at 6 o'clock Thursday at Sealy Lake Elementary School. The Granite County Sheriff's Office says Moose Lake residents may return to their homes tomorrow morning after being under evacuation orders due to that nearly 14,000-acre Myers fire burning near Phillipsburg. Sheriff Scott Dunkerson says the evacuation order will be downgraded to an evacuation warning at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. The Sunrise fire burning 11 miles southeast of Superior now mapped at more than 21,000 acres. This one is 30% contained. Several evacuation orders remain in effect for residents there. Those specifics can be found on our website.
The lightning-sparked Sprague fire has now burned an estimated 100 acres in the heart of Glacier National Park. The fire is located on the west side of the park above Crystal Ford on the Gunsight Trail. That's the main access trail to the Sperry Chalet. Park officials say depending on fire behavior, the Sperry Chalet may remain closed for the rest of the season. The structures there aren't immediately threatened by fire. However, the park is prepared to implement protection measures as necessary. And we can't mention every fire on air, but you can find reports on all the fires burning in western Montana on our website as we continue to track all the details and critical information you need on air and online, of course, with our Facebook and Twitter feeds and the KPAX mobile app. Coming up, Erin says we're back to hot and hazy conditions before long. Her forecast is just ahead.
Plus, new developments in the ongoing tensions with North Korea. That country has decided to see what the U.S. will do before striking Guam. Stay tuned.